My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old, the head of finance at a major bank in New York, and for as long as I can remember, I've shouldered the weight of my family, always playing the role of the responsible eldest daughter. Standing in front of my parents' grand old mansion on the outskirts of Boston, I felt as if the ground beneath my feet had just split open. The thick scent of jasmine hung in the summer night air, chilled and heavy when my mother, Vivian Carter, looked me straight in the eyes, not a hint of hesitation in her voice, and declared for the entire family to hear, "We've all agreed. You are not allowed to attend Lily's wedding." That sentence hit me like a knife through the chest, tearing apart every illusion I had ever held about family, love, and sacrifice, every belief I'd clung to for 34 years. If you've ever found yourself cast out by your own family, robbed of the right to be loved, denied a place in their most important moments, stay with me. This story might just be your story too. I was born in Portland, Maine, a port city that isn't too big, but always battered by storms and cold nearly all year round. My family belonged to the old middle class, of English descent, proud of honor, education, and stability above everything else. The house I grew up in sat on a quiet street lined with ancient maples, granite walls always cold to the touch, and a garden kept perfectly trimmed. A statement that everything here must be in its proper place. But that perfection only existed on the outside. Inside, I realized early on that everyone played a part, and not every role was allowed a voice. My mother, Vivian Carter, was the embodiment of the classic matriarch type, sharp, immaculate, in control of everything from breakfast to our education plans, even down to the car we drove or which college each child attended. She always appeared in neutral-toned suits, her hair perfectly brushed, her eyes scrutinizing every small detail. For her, the family's achievements were her personal glory, and anyone who tarnished that image was a stake. All her hopes were pinned on Lily, my younger sister, the golden child of the Carter family, the one she called the only light in an increasingly chaotic world. Lily is 6 years younger than me, and from a young age she was spoiled in a way that almost seemed strange, as if there were an invisible wall between us, one that no one was allowed to cross. Lily lived in a fairy tale world, in frilly white dresses with plastic tiaras Mom bought from children's stores. Anything Lily wanted, Lily got, sometimes with just a blink or a little pout. I still remember her 7th birthday. Mom called the whole extended family, ordered a giant tiered cake, hired a live band to play all afternoon, while my birthday that year was just the 3 of us and a small cake quickly bought from the bakery down the street. I never dared ask why, but I knew the answer deep down. I was born to be the one who manages, while Lily was born to be loved and to shine. My father, Harold Carter, is a history professor at a local college. He's gentle, soft-spoken, a man who lives with his old books and nightly cups of Earl Grey tea. If my mother is the one steering the Carter ship, my father sits quietly in the back, always finding ways to avoid unnecessary conflict. I used to wish he would speak up for me in my arguments with Mom, but he'd only shake his head or sigh. Over time, I learned that in this house, keeping up the appearance of peace was more important than truth, and sometimes, silence was the only way to survive. The memories of my childhood are nothing but a long stretch of days spent trying, desperately, to get my mother's attention. I wanted to prove that I too was worthy, that I deserved to be loved just as much as Lily. When I scored high on my final exams, my mother only shrugged and said, "Good, but your sister is still this family's real hope. You need to help her do even better." When I was accepted on scholarship to a top university in New York, the first thing she asked was, "But what about Lily? What does she need to catch up with you?" Every time I had a chance to shine, my mother would shift the spotlight straight back to my little sister, as if there was only one person in our family who deserved any recognition. Those years, I became used to my role as the dutiful eldest daughter, the one who got up early to make breakfast, helped my sister with her homework, and took responsibility every time something went wrong. Whenever Lily cried, no matter how big or small the reason, I'd hear my mother calling for me. "Emily, you're the older sister. You have to know how to yield, how to protect her. If you make your sister sad, you're letting the whole family down." Sometimes I wondered if I was just a shadow for Lily to lean on, an excuse for Mom to practice her control. The feeling of being put away in a cupboard, only brought out when needed, grew thicker in my heart. There were nights I'd sit alone on the balcony outside my bedroom, staring into the mist over Portland Bay, asking myself, if I disappeared one day, would anyone in my family even notice? Lily was different. She grew up on endless praise, protected by our mother from every pressure life could offer. If her grades slipped, Mom would march straight to school and argue with her teachers, coming up with every excuse so Lily never had to face consequences. When Lily wanted to dance, Mom hired a private coach that very week. The day Lily failed her college entrance exam, called every friend she had asking for help, while my only job was to encourage Lily, to make sure she doesn't fall apart. That favoritism was like a velvet curtain, blinding everyone in our family. Over time, I began to believe I was born only to be the support team, the background for someone else's stage. But here's the thing. I never hated my sister. On the contrary, I always told myself I needed to be stronger, more self-sacrificing, to keep the family together. I was the first one to teach Lily math, the one who secretly gave her pocket money, the one who comforted her through nights when Mom exploded over the tiniest things. Every time I saw Lily cry, I saw myself at age 7, terrified, wishing Mom would just hug me and say, "I love you, Emily." But those words were never said. Not even once. The Carter family was always famous for being model citizens in the eyes of relatives and friends. We showed up at every holiday gathering with perfect smiles, matching outfits, telling funny stories about Lily's achievements or showing off pretty photos in front of Grandma's rose garden. But when the guests left, when the lights were out, all that was left was a heavy silence where I realized I was just an outsider in my own life. There were nights I lay awake, hugging my knees, watching the yellow lamplight crawl up the ceiling and imagining another world. A world where I didn't have to force myself to be the perfect child. A world where even failure was met with a comforting embrace, not a reason to be compared, to be told to try harder, for the family. Deep down, I always longed for a day when I would get a hug from my mother, a proud nod from my father, or at the very least, a simple thank you for everything I'd done. But in 34 years, that never came. I think maybe all the biggest conflicts in life start with something small, a glance that never comes, a compliment that's swallowed, a birthday gift that's never given, or a dream laughed at before it has a chance to begin. My family, though we always put tradition, honor, and perfection on display, was full of cracks no one dared to name. Favoritism, silent competition, the helplessness that comes when no one dares to stand up and say, "Enough." And I, Emily Carter, grew up right there among those cracks, both as a victim and the only one still trying to mend things, even knowing I might be the one left behind. If someone asked me what mattered most in my life, I wouldn't hesitate to answer, family. Even though I had never truly received recognition, I always believed that if I just tried hard enough, if I sacrificed enough, one day everyone would see my worth. Because of that belief, I devoted nearly my entire youth to managing everything, to shielding my younger sister from the hardships I'd faced alone. Lily's high school years were far from smooth. She constantly lagged behind her friends, was lazy with her studies, and often compared herself to others. Especially to me, the older sister who always excelled, won prestigious scholarships and, above all, was mature and endlessly patient. There was a period when Mom, nearly in despair over Lily's grades, channeled all her frustration toward me. "Your sister is struggling, and you can't even help her?" Under that pressure, I dropped extracurriculars, turned down invitations from friends, and devoted all my time to tutoring Lily, staying up late every night to review lessons with her, doing her assignments, and sometimes even pleading with her teachers to let her retake tests. The climax of that period was Lily's final year. She was at risk of not graduating because of unpaid tuition. One early winter morning, I overheard Mom in the kitchen, voice raised as she called the bank, her face tense and eyes anxious. But by midday, after she'd left for work, I quietly checked the drawer where we kept important papers and found a letter, an overdue tuition notice that still hadn't been paid. In that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. Every cent I'd saved over 3 years of working, serving coffee, tutoring, selling things online, was gone in a single cold morning. I sent the money directly to Lily's school, kept everything a secret, and just told her, It's taken care of. Just focus on studying, okay? It wasn't until much later that Lily learned it was me, not Mom as she'd always thought, who'd quietly saved her. But that day, she just hugged me tight, tears running down her face, whispering, "Thank you, sis. If it weren't for you, I'd be done for." I just smiled, swallowing my sense of unfairness, feeling only relief that I'd protected my sister. Time passed, and everything seemed to fall back into the same pattern. I kept worrying about Lily. Mom continued to lavish all her affection on her, and Dad watched it all from the sidelines quietly. But then one day, my phone rang in the middle of a late work shift in Manhattan. It was Lily. Her voice mingled with the clamor of a crowded restaurant in Chicago, overjoyed as she shouted, "Sis, I got engaged. Brandon just got down on one knee in front of all my friends. I said yes, I'm getting married." The first feeling that washed over me was a strange happiness, as if all those years of sacrifice had finally been rewarded by my sister's true joy. I kept asking, "Who's Brandon? When's the wedding? Do you need my help?" Lily chattered excitedly about her young, talented businessman fiancé from a wealthy Chicago family, a charming, down-to-earth man who always cared for and spoiled her. The very next day, I booked a flight back to Portland, my notebook overflowing with ideas for a dream wedding. I became the first person Lily told, the first one she asked for advice about the dress, the flowers, the cake, even the guest list. Mom spent the entire evening on the phone just to ask, "You're going to be her maid of honor, right? Make sure you help me book the venue." For the first time in my life, I genuinely felt trusted, like I was finally part of something bigger than myself. I threw myself into preparing every detail for Lily's wedding with a passion I'd never felt before. I took the initiative to secure a deposit at a beautiful riverside restaurant in Rhode Island. Lush green lawns, rows of flaming red maples in autumn. I went with Lily to try on nearly 20 different wedding dresses, documenting every detail so she could make the perfect choice. I made the guest list, designed the invitations, even worked out the menu with a famous chef I'd met through financial events in New York. Every step filled me with hope. This time, I would be the one to make my sister's happiest day come true. And maybe, just maybe, Mom would finally acknowledge me, would praise me in front of everyone, even just once. I remember there was a time when Brandon's family went through a PR crisis. A tabloid ran a fabricated story about Brandon's supposed financial troubles. While everyone was in a panic, I leveraged my Wall Street connections to verify the facts, then coached Brandon on how to handle the media, crafting a transparent and persuasive press release. Within 3 days, the situation was under control. Not only was Brandon's family's reputation unharmed, but the media even began to praise how they'd faced the rumors head-on. Brandon kept thanking me. "If it weren't for Emily, I'd have had no idea what to do. You really are Lily's guardian angel." I spared no expense. Buying dresses, putting down deposits, booking decorators, printing invitations. I even prepaid part of the wedding band's fee just because Lily had once said, "Sis, it'd be amazing if we could get that band for the wedding." I meticulously recorded every expense, emailed updates to Mom and Lily so everyone could keep track. I thought, once again, if I just tried hard enough, my love and devotion would finally. But deep inside there was still a trace of unease. Sometimes, while trying on dresses with Lily, I'd see Mom standing in the hallway, whispering to Sophia, our cousin, who always just showed up to make up the numbers. The look in Mom's eyes was calculating, sometimes cold. I brushed off my doubts, telling myself, she's just worried about Lily. Me? I'm the older sister, the foundation. All I have to do is keep giving. I didn't realize that those seemingly close moments were nothing more than a fragile shell hiding a storm that was about to erupt. Still, I pressed on, clinging to the belief in family, believing that one day I'd be accepted, loved, seen as a true member. Just as everything seemed to be running perfectly, the undercurrents began. At first, I was still the devoted big sister, fielding emails and calls from Mom and Lily about every little detail, from flower colors to bridesmaid dresses, even the airport pickup schedule. But gradually, I noticed I was being left out. Announcements and impromptu planning meetings quietly disappeared from my calendar. One weekend afternoon, I realized that our messenger group wedding squad had been renamed. My name and the heart emoji were gone, replaced by Lily's crew, with a new profile photo of Mom, Lily, and Sophia, our cousin who'd always been just a reserve at family events. I texted Lily and she replied slowly, "Don't worry, sis. Mom's taking care of everything now. You're busy, so Sophia's helping me." Behind those light words, I heard the first fracture in what I thought was an unbreakable bond. At first, I tried to reassure myself. Everyone needs help sometimes, and Sophia, being younger and energetic, could be a great assistant with the little things. But as the days passed, my role was quietly, almost invisibly, dissolved. One Friday night, I was finishing a quarterly report for my company when I got a message from my best friend Evelyn. "Your cousin just posted a story about a wedding planning meeting with your mom and Lily at the Rhode Island mansion. Weren't you there?" I froze. It turned out, Mom had decided to move the entire wedding plan to the historic seaside estate in Rhode Island, Brandon's family's favorite. What hurt most was that everyone knew, everyone was there, except for me. I hadn't even been told. I called my mother, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Why didn't anyone tell me about changing the venue?" I asked. She sighed over the phone, her voice cool. "Emily, you live far away and you're busy with work. Sophia is very proactive. She understands what I want. Don't overthink it, just focus on your own job." At that moment, I realized all my contributions, weeks of preparation, money, effort, had now been lumped into, "Let Mom handle it." That feeling of helplessness and disappointment seeped into every vein. From that day on, every major and minor decision about the wedding happened without me. The restaurant I'd booked? Mom canceled it with a curt email straight to the manager. She didn't even CC me. I only found out through Sophia's Instagram. The restaurant had been replaced by a sprawling garden where Sophia and Lily tried on dresses, laughing together. I asked Lily, and she stayed sweet. "Don't worry, Sophia's helping me a lot. Mom said you're probably tired, so she let me handle things myself." For the first time, I felt like an uninvited guest, lost at the heart of my own family's big event. But the exclusion didn't stop there. When I suggested hiring that famous band Lily had always loved, Mom replied coldly, "This wedding isn't for showing off. You should know how to be modest." I knew, deep down, that if Sophia had suggested it, Mom would have agreed instantly. Even the guest list, painstakingly prepared by me, was revised by Mom and Sophia. Many of my closest friends simply disappeared from the final list. Evelyn called to comfort me. "I thought you were the maid of honor. Why aren't you even on the dress-fitting list?" I could only give a weak laugh, brushing off my doubts, telling myself maybe I was just too sensitive. The truth is, I'd ignored too many signs. The cold look Mom gave me whenever I protested, Sophia's over-eager excitement every time Mom put her in charge, Lily's silence whenever I asked about changes. I began to realize that in every video call, my place had been replaced. Where I once gathered all the information, now I just sat and listened to announcements like an outsider forcing a smile out of politeness. One night, coming home late from work, I found a package waiting at my door. Inside was a gilded invitation. Bridal shower for Lily Carter, hosted by Vivian Carter and Sophia Allen. My name was nowhere to be found, not a word asking for my opinion, not a single message to see if I could even attend. I held the invitation, my hands shaking, wondering if I truly wasn't part of this family anymore. Had everything I'd worked so hard for always been temporary? Just waiting to be replaced by someone who fit my mother's vision better? I tried calling Lily, wanting to ask what was really going on. She only hesitated. "Don't worry, sis, Mom's decided. You're really busy anyway, and Sophia helping me is actually great." I could hear it in her voice, hesitation, avoidance, as if she was afraid to confront how she really felt. After that call, I walked for hours under the cold New York rain, feeling loneliness invade every cell of my body. Why was I so easily cut out of everything important? Wasn't all those years of sacrifice worth even a single question, a single thank you? Anger welled up inside me, only to be drowned out by self-doubt. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe I was too controlling, too stubborn, or just not feminine enough for what she imagined a daughter should be on her sister's big day. I looked at myself in the mirror. A determined face, tired eyes after so many days of carrying the load. Suddenly, all I wanted was a hug, "Are you okay?" from anyone in my family. But I knew they were busy organizing a big day without me. It was only when Evelyn showed up, dragging me out of my room with a box of pizza and a bottle of red wine, that I finally allowed myself to cry. "You did everything you could, Emily," she whispered. "Sometimes people just can't see your value until they really lose you." I knew she was right, but deep down I still couldn't let go of the pain of always doing the right thing, only to be met with cold exclusion as if I'd never existed at all. The last days before Lily's wedding came faster than I expected. Life in New York kept rushing by, but my mind was always back in Portland, with Lily, with those ever-colder family dinners, with meetings I was left out of without explanation. I told myself that everything would work out, that if I just kept trying to be gentle, to be patient, Mom and my sister would eventually see that I wasn't controlling or out to ruin anyone's happiness. But the doubts grew, especially when close friends asked, "Emily, are you still the maid of honor? Why is everyone posting dress-fitting photos and you're not in any of them?" The breaking point came one Saturday afternoon, just as I was about to leave work, when I got a message from Madison, a close friend from college, also one of the wedding guests I'd included on Lily's list. The message was simple. "Are you okay? I just heard Sophia say you've been cut out of everything." A chill ran through me. I frantically scrolled through Instagram, through Sophia's stories and photos. There they were. Mom, Lily, and Sophia, laughing together, trying on pristine white dresses, posing by the lake at the Rhode Island estate, looking like they'd been best friends forever. The comments were overflowing. "Dream team. The perfect trio. Thank you, Sophia, for helping Lily have the happiest day." I called Lily, but got a busy signal. I called Mom. This time she picked up, her tone strangely calm. "Is something wrong, Emily? I'm busy picking flowers." I struggled to hold back my anger. "Mom, why didn't anyone tell me about the dress fitting? Don't you realize I put down deposits for dresses, restaurants, everything?" On the other end, Mom replied coldly, "Emily, you've done a lot. But have you thought about Lily's feelings? Sophia understands her more than you do. She's gentle, she knows how to make everyone happy. Stop trying to control everything. This family needs joy, not tension." I felt like I'd been slapped. All these years, all I'd done was sacrifice for my sister, for all of them. Now, all my efforts were repaid with rejection and blame. Truth was so bitter, I had nothing left to hold on to for comfort. That evening, as I sat alone eating dinner, I got an email confirming the restaurant deposit had been canceled. No explanation, just a cold line. "The event has been moved per the host's request." I knew without a doubt that Mom had changed everything without ever consulting me. Months of planning and work, stayed up all night, weighing whether I should just get on a bus back to Portland and confront everyone. But in the end, the next morning found me still curled up in the corner of my tiny apartment, hugging my knees and sighing. I didn't want to cause a scene at such an important time for Lily, but then the worst happened even faster than I imagined. Everything came to a head on a Sunday night, when I received an invitation to a family dinner at home. At first, I thought I'd try to be cheerful, try to smooth things over, but as soon as I stepped into the dining room, I could sense something was off, an odd, heavy tension unlike any dinner before. Mom sat at the head of the table, her eyes icy. Next to her was Sophia, dressed up and smiling as if she were the true hostess. Lily kept her gaze down, not daring to look up from her plate. She sat down and tried to make conversation, asking about the final wedding plans, but every answer was short, evasive. When I finally asked, "So, am I still the maid of honor?" the room fell silent. My mother slowly put her spoon down, looking straight at me. "Emily, we've all agreed. You're not allowed to attend Lily's wedding." I was so shocked I couldn't breathe. Mom continued, her voice steady, cold as ice. "The whole family discussed it thoroughly. You're controlling. You put too much pressure on Lily. You make everyone uncomfortable. Sophia even said you only think about yourself. A wedding should be a happy day, and no one wants your presence to ruin it anymore." Lily began to cry softly, but all she could say was, "I'm sorry, sis." Sophia, without a hint of hesitation, added, "You're too stubborn, Emily. You always think you're the center, that everyone should do things your way. Maybe you should learn how to let go." Dad sat at the end of the table, his hand shaking, silent. eyes averted as if he couldn't face the truth. Felt like the air had been sucked out of a tiny room. All the trust, hope, and love I'd protected for over 30 years vanished in a few cold, final sentences. No one defended me. No one asked if I was okay. I stood up, the chair scraping the wooden floor with a harsh cutting sound. Hot, humiliating tears rolled down my cheeks. I looked around, searching for a familiar gaze, but everyone turned away. "Fine," I said, my voice hoarse. "If you all think I'm a burden, I promise I'll never make anyone uncomfortable again." I turned away, taking nothing but my old coat, leaving behind every hope I'd ever had of a family that could love or appreciate me. Walking out of that familiar house, I realized, sometimes, the people who hurt you most are the very ones who once promised to protect you for life. That night, I walked for miles through the empty streets of Boston's suburbs. I didn't cry anymore. There was just a deep, hollow ache in my chest. I didn't know where I'd go or what I'd do, but I knew from that moment on, I was no longer a Carter. And the most painful part wasn't losing a role. It was realizing that sometimes, family is just a mask people wear, then toss away without a second thought. From that night, I was no longer the Emily Carter I used to be. Waking up in New York had never felt colder or lonelier, even though the tiny apartment still caught the soft golden sunlight at the window, and the maples on the street outside burned red in the middle of fall. Inside me, every color seemed faded. I got up early out of habit, made coffee, threw myself into work at the bank, pretending that staying busy could shield me from pain, but the truth was, it couldn't. With even a minute of quiet, that night replayed in my mind. The way Mom looked at me with ice in her eyes, Dad's silent, bowed head, Lily's choked tears, and the words, "We've all agreed. You're not allowed at Lily's wedding." Some nights I woke up from dreams, convinced I was still the frantic big sister in that old house in Portland, where laughter and arguments tangled together every evening. But then it all shattered. There was no one left to call, no group chat to check in on wedding plans, nothing but endless meetings at work and a little apartment that grew bigger and emptier with my loneliness. In those first days, I kept asking myself, was I really the selfish, controlling person everyone said I was? I reread every old message, every email I'd ever sent to Mom, to Lily, to Sophia, every little thing I'd handled, every sacrifice I'd made. But the more I read, the smaller I felt, lost in memories I once called love. I used to believe that if I just kept trying, my family would eventually see my worth. But maybe, some people will never look back until the moment they realize they've truly lost someone important. Quietly, I canceled all the financial support I'd sent Mom for the wedding preparations. I called a restaurant to check on payment. They told me my mother had already transferred the full amount, that I wasn't needed anymore. I sat staring at my bank statement, suddenly realizing that hundreds of transactions, big and small, were all tied to Lily's name. Tuition, dance classes, dresses, flower deposits, band reservations, stylist fees. Everything I'd ever done to help my sister over the years was now just a cold list of numbers on a screen. That bitter feeling, there was no one I could share it with. After that, I all but disappeared from social life, even from my close circle in New York. Evelyn was the only one who noticed, texting, calling nonstop. When I stopped picking up, she showed up at my door, bringing homemade pumpkin pie and a little box of wine. "How long are you planning to hide in your room, Emily?" Evelyn asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. "I don't want to bother anyone," I replied, my voice hoarse. "I just feel ashamed. It's like I've been thrown out of my own world." We sat together for hours, not saying much, just silently eating pie, listening to the distant sound of ambulances on the city streets. Eventually, Evelyn spoke softly. "No one has the right to take your worth away. Family isn't always a safe place, Emily. If you need to cry..." And in that moment, I broke down, the tears spilling out uncontrollably. All the endurance, the pain I'd held back, poured out at once. For the first time, I allowed myself to admit I was truly hurting, truly grieving. I started avoiding all contact with my family. I didn't reply to Lily's birthday messages. The occasional calls from Mom stopped coming. Dad texted me only once. "I'm sorry, Emily. Maybe I failed you as a father." I didn't answer. I just wanted to disappear, to let everyone truly feel the emptiness I'd carried for decades. At night, I wandered the empty streets of Manhattan, stopping by small bars, listening to sad jazz and watching strangers dance together. Some nights, I'd sit for hours in Central Park, just letting the biting cold seep through my heavy coat, hoping the wind would carry away the painful memories. I thought about those childhood nights, lulling myself to sleep in a dark room while Mom yelled at Lily while the whole house argued while I tried to make everything better and no one noticed. Now, those feelings all came back, stronger and heavier than ever. Work was the only place I could still hold myself together. I buried myself in reports, budgets, endless meetings. When colleagues checked in, I just smiled faintly, just a little tired. No one knew that underneath that fatigue was a deep, empty void, where every morning I'd ask myself, do I even deserve to be loved? Would anyone actually need me if I stopped trying? Evelyn encouraged me to see a therapist. At first, I refused, but by the second week, when another sleepless night left me crying during an overnight shift, I finally went to the office of Dr. Jameson, a renowned therapist in Manhattan. In that warm, quiet room, I allowed myself for the first time to speak honestly about how it felt to be excluded by my own family, about my fear of loneliness, about not knowing who I was outside of being the responsible big sister. Jameson listened without interruption, and at the end of the session simply said, "Emily, family wounds cut the deepest, but they are not the end of your story." I slowly learned to face myself instead of running from my pain. Every day, I made myself write down small things I was grateful for. A sunny morning, a perfectly made latte, Evelyn's smile, finishing a run around the park by myself. They were small, ordinary things, but they helped me realize the world was bigger than just my pain. After many restless nights, I wrote a letter to my mother, to Lily, and to my father. Not to beg for a way back in, but to say that I needed time. I needed to learn to live for myself, to set boundaries for those who had hurt me. "I'll be okay," I wrote. "Maybe it'll take a long time, but I believe I deserve happiness, even if no one in this family sees that." But my heart suddenly lightened as I had no idea what the future would hold. I only knew I had to step back from old expectations. Maybe the journey of healing begins with accepting that some wounds never fully close, but that we can still go on living, still learn to love ourselves, even if the whole world turns its back. In those days that seemed doomed to endless sadness, I never expected life to open a completely new path, starting with my best friend Evelyn. On a misty Sunday morning, Evelyn knocked at my door, her face a mix of seriousness and worry. "Emmeline, last night I was at Uncle David's house. You know, your dad's cousin," Evelyn said, flipping open her phone, eyes hesitant as if holding too big a secret. "I heard something last night you need to know, right now." Sat in silence, doubt and a faint thread of hope twisting in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation for all the pain I'd endured. Evelyn took a deep breath and began, "Last night at your Uncle David's family party, your mom, Vivian, told everyone that you were the one sabotaging Lily's happiness, that you couldn't accept your own sister, that you tried to control things, even I went numb." Evelyn shook her head. "Emily, I know you'd never do that. But she also told Brandon's family, even Brandon himself, that you talked badly about their family, that you demanded the right to decide everything. And worst of all, I heard she sent Brandon a string of emails and texts she claimed were evidence, but they'd been edited, cut up, changed." A wave of fury and helplessness rose in me like never before. Why would my mother make things up about me? Just to keep me out of the wedding? Or was it deeper? Because I was never someone she could control completely? Evelyn went on, her voice careful. "I also talked to Uncle David and he confirmed. Your mom has done the same thing to her own siblings. Anyone who threatens her, you can push out one way or another." Hearing that, I felt both pain and, strangely, a kind of relief. It wasn't just my fault. This was a toxic cycle that had repeated itself for generations. Inside me, the quiet ache turned into a stream of determination. I needed the truth. I needed to know if Lily, my own sister, really believed those things about me. That very day, I messaged Lily. I didn't blame her. I just asked, "Do you still trust me, Lily?" At first, She didn't respond. That night, she called back, her voice trembling, mixed with sobs. "I'm sorry, sis. I don't know who to trust anymore. Mom said you wanted to ruin my wedding, that you're controlling. But when I look back at the messages, things feel off. Some parts are missing, and there are messages I never remember you sending that suddenly appeared on my phone." In that moment, I realized, not only was I a victim, but Lily was too. We were both victims of manipulation and control. I softened my voice. "It's not your fault, Lily. I only ever wanted you to be happy, but you need to know the truth. Did you keep the original messages?" Lily hesitated, then admitted she had backed everything up to the cloud. I asked her to send them to me, and at the same time, I enlisted Evelyn with her tech skills and legal knowledge to help verify which messages were real and which were altered. Within just 2 days, everything came to light. There were emails that had been cut, words edited to make me out to be a toxic big sister, some entire segments fabricated. Evelyn helped me compare timestamps, data sources, creating a detailed analysis. We even found proof that Mom had sent these emails to Brandon, complete with warnings like, "Emily is selfish and wants to control Lily to keep her place in the family." On top of that, Evelyn discovered that some emails had come from Sophia's account, my cousin, who'd suddenly become Mom's right hand, who had also sent strange, slanderous messages to Brandon's family to turn them against me. I knew exactly who to go to next: Uncle David, the one person in the family who was never afraid of my mother. When I told him everything, he wasn't surprised. "You're not the first, Emily. Your mother's divided this family before, made things up so anyone who crossed her ended up isolated. Don't ever think it's because you're not good enough. She just can't let go of her power." He encouraged me. "If you need it, I'll stand with you." Having his support only strengthened my resolve not to let the truth stay buried. But the thing that shocked me most was Sophia, who seemed harmless, but was actually currying favor with my mother to angle for a share of the inheritance, and was getting paid extra by Brandon's family for helping with the wedding planning. After talking to friends in finance, Evelyn found out Sophia had once been sued by other relatives for minor fraud, but Mom had quietly everything behind the scenes. Right then, Brandon himself reached out to me. His voice was full of guilt. "Emily, I'm sorry I believed things I shouldn't have. Lily's mom told me you were controlling and out to harm the family, but when I look at everything now, I realize you're the only one who ever really protected Lily." The messages she showed me, they felt fake. Some parts didn't fit, and the tone wasn't you. Brandon wanted to meet, to get to the bottom of it all, and I agreed. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely heard. That meeting was the final push I needed to stand up for myself. Brandon, Lily, Evelyn, Uncle David, we all joined forces to seek the truth. In the days that followed, I barely slept, working with Evelyn to sift through data, find evidence, cross-check every message, every email. When it was all clear, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I had allies. I had people who truly believed in me. I had the right to reclaim my dignity after years of manipulation and lies. That feeling of relief, after so many months drowning in pain, washed over me like warm water filling my chest. Sitting in my little apartment, I smiled for the first time in weeks. In that moment, I understood. The only reason I was cast out of my family wasn't because I was incompetent or selfish. It was because I was strong enough not to bow down to my mother's toxic rules. Now, it was time for me to find my voice again, not just for myself, but for Lily, the little sister who had always been the greatest reason for my sacrifices. Determined to reclaim my dignity, I started planning to confront my family, this time not to beg for forgiveness or hope for acceptance, but to force everyone to face the truth. I reached out to my father, explaining that I wanted to arrange a full family meeting before Lily's wedding. "Dad, I need one chance for everyone to hear me out, and this time I won't stay silent," I emphasized, my voice calm but unwavering. He hesitated but finally agreed. "You have the right to speak. I'll be there." I sent invitations to my mother, Sophia, Lily, Brandon and his family, and several close relatives from my dad's side, especially Uncle David and Evelyn. In the message, I didn't give a reason. I simply requested that everyone be present. The meeting would take place at the Carter family estate in Portland, the same house that had been the backdrop for every family gathering. The place I'd grown up. The place where I once believed I truly belonged. I arrived early, carrying my laptop and a thick folder of compiled evidence. Side-by-side message comparisons, emails, verified metadata that Evelyn had helped prepare. Brandon and Lily were the first to arrive, both gripping my hands tightly in silent support. "You're not alone." When Mom and Sophia walked in, I caught a flicker of unease beneath their carefully composed faces. Mom took her seat at the head of the table, trying to look calm. Sophia avoided my eyes, wringing her hands in her lap. The air in the room was heavy, suffocating. Once everyone had gathered, I stood up, letting the tremor in my voice show. "Thank you all for being here. There are things that have been twisted for far too long, and today, I'm going to set them straight." I began laying out the evidence. On the big screen, I played audio files, displayed chat logs, original emails and their altered versions, timelines, and even short video clips that Evelyn had recovered from the cloud. Each detail, every timestamp, was a cut through the web of lies spun by my mother and Sophia. I didn't hide my feelings, and I spoke without hatred, just honestly, directly. Those are messages between me and Lily. This is the original. Here is the edited version. Mom, you sent this to Brandon and others, deliberately altering it to make me look controlling and toxic. This is an email from Sophia, slandering me to Brandon's family. And here's the technical report proving all the changes were made on Mom's and Sophia's computers. Stunned silence settled over the room. I looked straight at my mother, searching for any sign of regret or remorse, but saw only anger and disbelief. "What are you trying to do, Emily? Do you want to ruin your sister's happiness?" she snapped, her voice shrill. Sophia's face went pale as I opened her file. "Sophia, dear cousin, I know you've been trying to win my mother's favor for an inheritance, but you didn't realize every action leaves a trace. I have documentation of your past fraud case with the Thompsons, and I have records of the bonuses you received from Brandon's family for helping with the wedding. If necessary, I can send it all to a lawyer." The silence stretched on. Uncle David stood up, his voice strong and unyielding. "I can confirm this. Vivian, you've done this not only to Emily, but to many others in the family. It's time for those who are wrong to take responsibility." Brandon came over and took my hand in front of everyone. "Emily, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. It's because of you that Lily has had the strength to get through everything. You're not just a good sister. You're the only one brave enough to face the truth." Lily burst into tears, running over to embrace me. "I'm sorry, sis. I had no idea it was this bad. Without you, I wouldn't know what was real and what was fake anymore. I won't let anyone come between us again." I looked around and saw the change in everyone's eyes. There was no pity left, no more skepticism. For the first time, I stood before my family, strong, proud, voicing all the pain I had endured. I did everything just to be acknowledged by Mom, to be accepted by all of you. But in the end, all I got was suspicion, manipulation, and exclusion. From now on, I won't allow anyone to cross my family again, even if I have to walk away. Mom was flustered, angry, but unable to deny the truth. Dad came over, putting his hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry for letting you suffer so much. I won't stay silent anymore." Brandon's family also spoke up, declaring they would no longer allow Sophia to interfere with the wedding and that they were ready to support me if there was any retaliation. Then, an unexpected plot twist. Martha, a relative, stood up and revealed that Sophia had pulled similar tricks to scam other family members and had even nearly been prosecuted for forging financial documents. The room erupted. My mother almost lost control, but this time nobody stood with her. The queenly power she'd held for decades crumbled in a single afternoon. As everyone left, Lily hugged me, mascara-streaked tears on her cheeks. "Can you forgive me, sis?" I didn't answer right away, but squeezed her hand. "I don't know what forgiveness means yet, but I know I'm done suffering for anyone else. From now on, you'll have to learn to protect yourself, too." I stepped out of the old mansion, breathing in the sharp winter air, feeling an extraordinary lightness. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the truth, or of being hated. I knew I had reclaimed my voice, reclaimed myself, after years buried in pain and darkness. That confrontation felt like a storm sweeping through every layer of dust from the past, tearing away the last masks in the Carter family. But what remained for me wasn't just apologies or shame-filled looks. It was a quiet peace I'd never known before, a peace that came from awakening, from finally being free to draw boundaries for myself. The next morning, with the first rays of sunlight peeking over the old streets of Portland, I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee with no one hurrying me, no mother micromanaging my every minute. Sunlight touched my hand through the window, a gentle reminder that I still existed, that I still deserved my own happiness. The first thing I did was write a long email to my mother. I didn't accuse, didn't blame. I just recounted every forgotten memory, every sacrifice overlooked, every moment I had to pretend to be strong to keep together a home that had rotted from the inside. I told her, "From now on, I will live for myself. If you want a relationship with me, the only condition is respect and honesty. I will accept no more control, manipulation, or exploitation. Every boundary is clear and non-negotiable." I sent the email with a strange, profound sense of relief, as if I'd just shrugged off a mountain from my shoulders. Even though my mother didn't reply right away, I didn't feel anxious or desperate for an answer. Instead, I put my phone on silent, stepped outside, and let the noise of the city fill up all the old empty spaces in my heart. It wasn't until that afternoon that Lily finally called me. Her voice on the phone still trembled, but this time it was a new kind of resolve, not the old fear. "Sis, I know you've endured so much injustice and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. But I want you to know, I've told Brandon and both families, if you don't come to my wedding, I won't have it at all." But for once in her life, my little sister, once so shy, always hiding behind Mom, was now standing up for herself and for me. I just said, "You don't have to do that to repay me, Lily. But I'm proud of you for finally choosing yourself." That night, I saw Dad again in the small, warmly lit living room. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes wet. "I'm sorry for letting you fight alone all these years. I was too weak, too afraid of confrontation, too worried about losing family peace, so I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. From now on, I won't stand on the sidelines anymore. I want to truly be there for you girls." I squeezed his hand, feeling warmth for the first time in years. In that moment, every distance between father and daughter seemed to dissolve, leaving behind a deep empathy that only people who've suffered the same way can share. The next day, after everything was out in the open, Brandon's family met with me and made it clear they fully supported Lily and me, ready to cut ties with Sophia and anyone who had tried to manipulate the truth. They encouraged Lily, "Be true to yourself," and assured us, "A real family is a place where everyone is respected, not a place where love is traded for reputation or power." Those words felt like a warm embrace for me, someone who had spent so many years just trying to please others. Sophia was ostracized by both Brandon's family and our relatives. All the evidence of her past fraud was turned over to Brandon's lawyers and they began legal proceedings. One by one, those who had turned their backs on me now had to face the real consequences of siding with wrongdoing. Under pressure from the extended family and Brandon's side, my mother was forced to enter mandatory therapy or risk losing all her reputation and social ties. I knew she wouldn't change easily, but I didn't care anymore. I realized that sometimes, the only way to hold on to a piece of happiness is to let go of the hope that someone will become the better version you always wished for. I decided to move back to Portland for a while, seeking peace in the harbor city that had nurtured my childhood. I rented a small apartment by the sea and spent time opening a financial consulting studio just for young women. Women like me, who'd been left behind, who'd had to stand up on their own after heartbreak. I worked with new colleagues not to prove my worth to anyone but simply to wake up each morning and know I could be myself, no longer carrying the weight of an entire family on my shoulders. Lily visited me often. We'd walk along the beach for hours, talking about dreams and simple things we'd never dared hope for before. No one else interfered, no judgments, no more pressure. We learned how to love each other all over again, this time with freedom and maturity, without Mom's shadow looming over every decision. I slowly learned to set boundaries not only with my mother, but with anyone who ever took my love for granted, who assumed I would always be the responsible eldest, no matter the cost to my own happiness. My new friends in Portland called me an inspiration, but for me, the greatest feeling was relief, finally daring to say enough to everything that had ever hurt me. I kept in touch with Dad, but this time I no longer expected him to solve everything for me. Instead, every time we met, I told him about the little things in my day, about the small joys of seeing sunlight after rain, about the safety of knowing I had the right to set limits. He listened, no longer hiding his feelings as he once did, sometimes even asking, "Have you really forgiven me yet?" I'd just smile and answer gently, "You just need to be yourself, Dad. I know the journey of healing is far from over. There will be days when painful memories come flooding back, nights I'll lie awake wondering if I made the right choices. But I also know that from now on, I will never lose myself just to preserve a family that's become nothing but a shadow of toxic expectations. I choose myself. I choose unconditional love for who I am. I choose freedom and self-respect as my compass for every relationship from here on." The early spring breeze in Portland drifts through my window, carrying the salty scent of the sea and the distant cry of seagulls from the harbor. It's been nearly a year since I walked out of that old mansion, shedding the last illusions of a perfect home I'd longed for as a child. Some mornings I wake up, wondering if what I went through was even real, or just a dream that stretched on too long. My little apartment by the sea is always flooded with sunlight. The walls are lined with new photos, me and Lily laughing on white sand, Dad hugging both of us on a spring picnic, young colleagues at my new studio raising glasses to our first successful contract. Sometimes I laugh, remembering the old Emily Carter, the girl who only knew how to sacrifice, to endure, to chase after approval from a mother who was never satisfied. The financial consulting studio I founded has become a safe haven for so many young women in the city. Every day, I listen to stories full of heartache, girls forced to sacrifice for their families, single mothers starting over after heartbreak, women daring to set boundaries with those closest to them for the very first time. When I see them rise, stand strong, and stop fearing judgment, I know I've done the right thing. I no longer feel invisible. I've become part of a community, spreading the energy of healing and hope. With Lily, I feel a deep change. She held a small, warm wedding by the beach, not extravagant, no long guest list, just the people who truly mattered. I was her maid of honor, standing beside her at the altar, gripping her hand during her vows. As the music played, I looked into her eyes and realized, at last, we were truly sisters, not divided by anyone, no longer walled off by favoritism or lies. She thanked me with the simplest words. "If it weren't for you, I'd always just be Mom's shadow. Thank you for giving me the courage to start over." Dad learned to change too. He's no longer the man who only watched from the sidelines, afraid of conflict. He calls often, invites me to breakfast, talks about little things. Once he came to my studio and sat quietly all afternoon just to see me work. Before he left, he hugged me and whispered, "You've done more than anyone ever hoped, Emily. Never let the past decide your worth." Words I'd waited decades to hear now. They truly meant something. As for Mom, she's still attending mandatory therapy as required by Brandon's family. Sometimes she sends short emails, not commands or judgments, just hesitant questions. "Are you well? How's your dad? Is the studio okay?" I reply politely, without bitterness, and without hope. I understand. I can't change the past. Can't force anyone to love me the way I want. But I can forgive, not to restore what's broken, but to set myself free. One evening I sat on the steps of my new home, watching the sunset turn the sea violet, with Lily and Brandon beside me, Dad brewing tea. I realized, not everyone you're born to will love you unconditionally. Some relationships must end for better things to begin. Some people must go far away for you to finally come home to yourself. I no longer need my mother's approval, no longer ache whenever someone talks about duty as a daughter or a sister. I live lightly, firmly, fully as myself. Sometimes I think of the thousands out there, people who've been excluded, who once thought they were invisible, who hoped and were let down by their own flesh and blood. If you're reading this and see yourself in my story, I want to tell you, you have the right to rebuild your own home, from broken pieces, from wounds you thought would never heal. We only live once. If I have to choose between the safety of silence and my own true voice, I'll always choose to be myself, even if that means walking through loneliness for a while. Because sometimes, the greatest courage is to say, I am enough. I deserve happiness and respect no matter who turns away. If you've ever felt cast out by family, denied, or stripped of your right to belong in your own life, share your story in the comments below. Never be afraid to set boundaries with anyone, even those closest to you. Sometimes, the biggest journey is simply finding your way back to yourself.